plus 3,300. That is the number that the odds makers have come up with for Gunnar Stockton's chances to win the Heisman Trophy this coming season, this 2025 season. He's not one of the favorites, but he is on this list, and he's tied with some other people, but he's the 15th name when you just read it down the list, and I'll talk to you about the players that are ahead of him, and we'll talk about if Gunnar Stockton has a legitimate chance to do this. I talked about the Heisman Trophy in terms of Georgia about a month ago, almost exactly a month ago, maybe a little bit more than a month ago, when ESPN came out with an article about way too early Heisman Trophy candidates for the 2025 season, and they named Nate Frazier as one of those players. So a couple of Georgia players have gotten buzz, right? At least there's a conversation about them in terms of winning the Heisman Trophy this coming season. Gunnar plus 3,300. There's a lot of guys up ahead of him, guys like Arch Manning, guys like Nico Iamaleava from Tennessee, and Gunnar's on this list with some other guy. I think he's got a better chance than some of these people. I think he's got a worse chance than some of these people, but he's on it. And I talked a lot about how I didn't think it was realistic to, obviously it's unrealistic to expect it, but even just to think about it in terms of Georgia, why I was talking about that in the frame of Nate Frazier. Gunnar Stockton, quarterbacks, look, this is for the most part as a quarterback award. We just witnessed a season where a quarterback was not in the top 2 of the voting behind, Travis Hunter, the athlete, and Ashton Jeanty, the running back from Boise State. Years like that can happen, but for the most part, quarterbacks are the ones that have been dominating this award. And that's just who it's been for probably 15 to 20 years. It's been mostly quarterbacks that have been winning the award. Gunnar, can he do that? I can't answer that question if whether or not Gunnar can do that, but we could talk about what it would take, and we could talk about what Georgia's path is. I think that there are a handful of reasons why Gunnar possibly can do that, and I think that there are a few reasons why it's unrealistic to expect that out of a Georgia quarterback. So let's get into it. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post. I'm linking the newsletter down below. It's in the description of this video. Make sure you check that out, along with a link for BetMGM. Not my deal, but go ahead and check that out. Plus 3,300 odds for Gunnar Stockton. Let's talk about first of all, let's talk about the guys that are ahead of him. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, right now has the best odds, plus 800. All right? I'll get into it. Arch Manning, plus 950. Cade Klubnik and Drew Allard tied for third, plus 1,200, along with Nico Iamaleava. And Jeremiah Smith, A couple guys tied after that. Julian Sayin, the player expected to be the starting quarterback at Ohio State. Lenore Sellers, South Carolina's quarterback. Carson Beck, now Miami quarterback, plus 2,000. Tonte Moore, plus 2,000. The player that's expected to be the starting quarterback for Oregon. DJ Lagway, plus 2,000. John Mateer, Kevin Jennings, Miller Moss. See, this is all quarterbacks except for Jeremiah Smith so far of Ohio State. The next 9 quarterback is Ryan Williams at plus 3,500. So that's kind of where you're getting. You're getting all the top quarterbacks in the country are being lumped up there. But right now, Garrett Nussmeier of LSU, Arch Manning of Texas, they are kind of the separators in this thing. The why for Garrett Nussmeier, the volume. They're going to throw the ball a lot. That's been LSU's MO the last couple of years, and he has pro potential in the eyes of scouts, and he kind of disappointed in that. He was a sleeper guy to become a first-round pick in this coming draft. He goes back. Arch Manning, obviously, you get it. You get it with Klubnik. You get it with Nico. The dual threat ability of a Lenore Sellers. How could Gunnar Stockton get this thing done? How could he give himself just as good of a chance? Well, Georgia went out there and they got Zachariah Branch. They got Noah Thomas. They identified, hey, look, the entire country identified that Georgia had a receiver problem, that Georgia had an offensive problem. But Kirby and the staff, they go out and they get a couple of guys to make whoever it is, but it's going to be Gunnar Stockton, most likely, the quarterback for Georgia this coming season, make their job easier. Zachariah Branch is a very special talent in college football. I don't know if it's going to equate to production, but it would be if he is really as good as people think and what we've seen, it'd be a failure on Georgia for him to come to Athens and just not produce. If they just don't get him the ball and it doesn't work, to an extent that would be a failure on Georgia's end because he is that type of talent. In the little that we saw of Gunnar Stockton, he didn't have a lot of that. Obviously, he had the speed and Arian Smith But outside of that, he's not getting as much help. He doesn't have Jeremiah Smith or Brian Williams or Emeka Buka, guys like that. Even Tennessee has had some real weapons like Dylan Sampson. He just didn't have the weapons in the short amount of time that we've seen Gunnar Stockton in college football. And we saw some promising signs out of Gunnar in that Sugar Bowl against Notre Dame. The ability to hit the deep ball, the ability to hit open receivers, the ability to hit receivers in stride across the middle of the field. For the most part, sound decision-making. Better decision-making than maybe you've seen him in some of those other moments, like against Texas. And you also saw dual threat ability. So improved weapons around Gunnar, assumingly improved weapons around Gunnar is how I'm going to put it. You would think that he could improve off of what maybe Carson Beck has done in the last couple of years. Carson, 24-6 touchdown INT ratio, 70% completion percentage. That 70% completion percentage mark is probably the number that Gunnar, I would imagine, is going to hover around. He's a guy that, for the most part, doesn't want to make bad decisions, is accurate, and also will tuck it and run it. And that's kind of the other element of this thing. Part of why Arch Manning has great odds, he's going to have some rushing touchdowns. They're going to have packages for him to run. Nussmeier, that's not the case, but it's part of why you see Lenore Sellers up here, the quarterback for South Carolina. When you watch Norris Sellers this past season, you didn't see someone that had elite skill when they dropped back in terms of passing the ball. You saw someone that had elite skill in scrambling, someone that had elite skill in running the football. Those rushing numbers are what's going to get him notoriety and potentially in New York for this award. It's possible. Stetson Bennett was a Heisman finalist, and you have to go back to 2022. He's a finalist with C.J. Stroud. It's the year that Caleb Williams won, and Max Duggan of TCU was the other guy that was there. Stetson was there, 4,000 plus yards. It was a great story, and he had around 40 total touchdowns, right? I think it was 27 passing and 10 rushing, I believe were the rough numbers. He had around 40 total touchdowns. It'd have to be that if you're going to stock. It can't be what Carson did last year with 28 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. Those numbers won't cut it. If Gunnar is going to get there, you need to get close to that 4,000-yard mark. You need to throw for 30 touchdowns. You need to rush for 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 touchdowns. The dual threat ability from Gunnar, they will run the ball with him. I don't know if Gunnar is going to ever break off this really long run. He doesn't really have that kind of track speed, but he's a sound runner. He's a physical runner, and he's a smart runner, and you're going to get rushing touchdowns with Gunnar Stockton. Those touchdowns would help him in this case, but Georgia also has to be really good. I don't know if you'd have to put up some unreal numbers to be the Georgia quarterback and the team just, be a 9-3 team to get to Heisman Trophy ceremony. I mean, part of the reason why Stetson was there was because Georgia was undefeated in 2022, right? His numbers weren't all that. Obviously, the competition pool maybe wasn't as strong as certain years, and I think we kind of saw that this past year. It's not just about the numbers, it's about the story. Well, Gunnar Stockton is going to have a lot of opportunity in these huge games. Big game against Alabama. Big game against Texas at home. Alabama home. Ole Miss at home. They'll have to go to Tennessee. They'll have to go to Auburn. The big moments will be there. Georgia was the most watched regular season college football team this past season. There was no team that was watched more during the regular season than the Georgia Bulldogs. And that might not be the case next season. Maybe it's Ohio State. Maybe it's Georgia. Maybe it's Alabama. But Georgia will be up there, and they will be watched. And Gunnar will be there to be praised, and he will be there to be criticized. He'll have the moments. It's what I referenced a year ago when Carson Beck had top 3 odds to win the Heisman Trophy. I talked about, hey, it's not a super realistic thing to think about, but the part that is realistic is if he puts up good numbers, people are going to be seeing this because they're going to be playing in all of these high-level games. The same thing happens this coming season with Gunnar Stockton. That's the same exact sentiment. He's going to have opportunity to do it. Georgia, I talked about this week, Georgia, it being a rebuilding year potentially and something that fans should look out for. It's possible, but Georgia did make an effort to try to make its offense better this coming season. If the offense is better and Gunnar is better than Carson Beck, then yes, he is a Heisman Trophy candidate. Carson himself might be a Heisman Trophy candidate going down there to Miami and getting the keys to an offense to where they're going to say, hey, man, we want you to sling this thing around. We want to help your draft stock, and we want you to help us. Arch Manning, the name value and being at Texas is going to help him. Nico Iamaleava, right? He's going to have to put up much better numbers if he wants to get there. Cade Klubnik's going to have to put up better numbers if he wants to get there. To me, there's not an overwhelming favorite when you look at this thing. There's not. I understand why it's Arch. If you're down with DJ Lagway and that's the way you roll, then maybe he's your favorite. If you think Jeremiah Smith's on his way to really being the best receiver in college football history, right? One of those types of players, then maybe that's the guy you're thinking. But Gunner, to me, when I look at this pool, I don't think it's realistic, but he's got just as good a chance as anybody if Georgia's offense clicks better next season. Now, part of that will be running the ball better, and that will take away from Gunner. But I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and doubt it. I doubted it with Carson, and rightfully so I doubted it with Carson. He didn't have the dual threat ability. Georgia's offense wasn't as good, and he didn't play as well. He didn't live up to the expectations. Gunner's expectations are more malleable at this point, and I think the ceiling is there with him to where he could get there. I don't think it's as unrealistic as maybe it was with Carson Beck, but right now, plus 3,300, there's about 14 guys on this list with him. A few of them are tied, so he's around 10th for odds. Gunner Stockton, Heisman Trophy candidate for this 2025 season. Don't cut him out too soon. Thanks for watching.